how to feel you have value. So, concretely speaking, how does one go about this? One cannot praise and one cannot rebuke. What other words and choices are there? Think about a time when you had help in your work, not from a child, but from a partner who is your equal, and you will probably see the answer right away. When a friend helps you clean your home, what do you say to him? I say thank you. Right. You convey words of gratitude, saying thank you to this partner who has helped you with your work. You might express straightforward delight, I'm glad, or you could convey your thanks by saying, that was a big help. This is an approach to encouragement that is based on horizontal relationships. That's all? Yes. The most important thing is to not judge other people. Judgment is a word that comes out of vertical relationships. If one is building horizontal relationships, there will be words of more straightforward gratitude and respect and joy. Your point that judgment is created by vertical relationships certainly seems to be true. But what about this? Could the words thank you actually have such a great power as to be able to bring back courage? After all, I think I'd prefer to be praised, even if the words I hear are ones that come from vertical relationships. Being praised essentially means that one is receiving judgment from another person as good, and the measure of what is good or bad about that act is that person's yardstick. If receiving praise is what one is after, one will have no choice but to adapt to that person's yardstick and put the brakes on one's own freedom. Thank you, on the other hand, rather than being judgment, is a clear expression of gratitude. When one hears words of gratitude, one knows that one has made a contribution to another person. So even if you're judged as good by another person, you don't feel that you've made a contribution. That's that's right. This is a point that will connect to our subsequent discussion as well. In adherent psychology, a great deal of emphasis is given to contribution. Why is that? Well, what does a person have to do to get courage? In Adler's view, it is only when a person is able to feel that he has worth that he can possess courage. When a person is able to feel that he has worth, he has when a person is able to feel that he has worth, do you recall when we were discussing the feeling of inferiority and I spoke of this as being an issue of subjective worth? It is one able to feel one has worth, or does one feel one is worthless being? If one is able to feel one is worth, then one can accept oneself just one is and have the courage to face one's life tasks. So the issue that arises at this point is how on earth can one become able to feel one has worth? Yes, that's exactly. I need you to explain that very clearly, please. It's quite simple. It is when one is able to feel I am beneficial to the community that one can have a true sense of one's worth. This is the answer that would be offered in Adler psychology. That I am beneficial to the community, that one can act on a community. That is to say, on other people, and that one can feel I am of use to someone. Instead of feeling judged by another person as good, being able to feel by way of one's own subjective point that I can make contributions to other people, it is at this point that at last we can have true sense of our own worth. Everything we have been discussing about community feeling and encouragement connects here. Hmm, I don't know. It's starting to get a bit of confusing. We are getting to the heart of this discussion now. Please stick with me a while longer. It is about having concern for others, building horizontal relationships, and taking the approach of encouragement. All these things connects to a deep life awareness of I am of use to someone and in turn to your courage to live. To be of use to someone, that is what my life is worth living for. To be to be of use of some to someone, that is what my life is worth living for. Let's take a little break. Would you like some coffee? Yes, please. The discussion of community feeling had become more confusing than ever. One must not praise and one must not rebuke either. All words that are used to judge other people are words that come from vertical relationships, and we need to build horizontal relationships. It is only when one is able to feel that one is of use to someone that one can have true awareness of one's worth. There was a major flaw in this logic somewhere. The young man felt it instinctively. As he sipped the hot coffee, thoughts of his grandfather crossed his mind. Exist in the present. Well, have you worked things out? Gradually, but yes, it's getting better. It's getting clearer. You don't seem to be aware of it, but just now you said something really over the top. It's a dangerous, rather extreme opinion that just negates everything in the world. Oh, really? What is it? It's the idea that being of use to someone is what gives one a true awareness of one's worth. If you put it in other way around, a person one a person who isn't of any use to others has no worth at all. That's what you're saying, isn't it? If one takes that to its logical conclusion, then the lives of newborn babies and of invalids and old people who are bedridden aren't worth living either. How could this be? Let's talk about my grandfather. He spends his days bedridden at an old people's home. Since he has dementia, he doesn't recognize any of his children or grandchildren, and his condition is such that he will not be able to go on living without constant care. One simply couldn't think of him as being of use to someone. Don't you see? Your opinion is basically the same thing as saying to my grandfather, people like you aren't qualified to live. I reject that definitely. How do you reject that? There are parents who refute my explanation of the concept of encouragement by saying our child does bad things from morning to night and there is never an occasion to tell him, thank you or you help a lot. The context is probably the same as what you're talking about, isn't it? Yes, it is. So tell me, please, how you justify that. At this point, you are looking at another person on the level of his acts. In other words, that the person did something. So, from the point of view, it might seem that bedridden old people are only nuisance, and are of no use to anyone. So let's look at other people not on the level of acts but on the level of being. Without judging whether or not other people did something, One rejoices in their being there, in their very existence, and one calls out to them with words of gratitude. You call out to their existence? What on earth are you talking about? If you consider things at a level of being, we are of use to others and have worth just being there, just being here. This is an indisputable fact. No way. Enough joking around. Being of use to someone just by being here, this got to be straight out of some new religion. Well, for example, suppose your mother has a car accident. Her condition is serious and her life may be in danger. At a time like that, you would not be wondering if your mother did something or anything of the sort. More than likely, you will just be thinking you'll be glad if she makes it, and you're glad she's holding on right now. Of course, I would. That's what it means to be grateful on the level of being. Your mother might may not be able to do anything in her critical condition that would be considered an act, but just by being alive, she would be supporting the psychological state of you and your family and would therefore be of use. The same could be said for you too. If your life were in danger and you were hanging on by a thread, the people around you would probably feel very gladdened just by the very fact of your existing. They would they would simply feel thankful that you are safe in here and now and would be wanting you to perform some direct act. At the very least, there is no reason they would have to think that way. So instead of thinking of oneself on the level of acts, first of all, one accepts oneself in the level of being. That's an extreme example. Everyday life everyday life is different. No, it's the same. What is the same about it? Try and give me more everyday example, please. If you can't, I won't be able to agree with this. Alright, alright. When you look at other people, we are prone to construct our own ideal images of ourselves, which we then detract from the judge from the which which we then detract from and judge. Imagine, for example, a child who never talks back to his parents, excels in both schoolwork and sports, attends a good university, and joins a large company. There are parents who will compare their child to such an image of an ideal child, which is an impossible fiction, and then be filled with complaints and dissatisfaction. They treat the idealized image of they treat the idealized image as 100 points and they gradually subtract from that. This is truly a judgment way of thinking. Instead, the parents could refrain from comparing the child to anyone else, see him for who he actually is, and be glad and grateful for his being there. Instead of taking away points from some idealized image, they could start from zero. And if they do that, they should be able to call out to his existence itself. Okay? But I'd say just as an idealistic approach. So are you saying that even if the kind of child who never goes to school or get a job, but just shuts himself and stays home, one should still communicate one's gratitude and thank you? And say thank you? Of course. Suppose your shut-in child help you wash the dishes after a meal. If you were to say then, enough of that already, just go to school. You would be using the words of such parents who detract from an image of an ideal child. If you were to take an approach, the child would probably end even more discouraged. However, if you can say a straightforward thank you, the child just might feel his own worth and take a new few steps forward. That's just utterly hypocritical. is nothing more than a nonsensical talk of hypocrite. It sounds like the neighbor